OnlyFans decided that they were going to throw their sex workers under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
I can say for myself, and I want you guys to be able to speak for yourself. I believe that sex work is work, and so therefore they deserve to be treated with with dignity because they are humans. Your thoughts?
Well, so the reason that this is happening is because MasterCard is saying that anybody who uses MasterCard to pay for porn has to be age verified. And any porn that is being sold to anyone who pays for MasterCard has to be age verified, including verified in real time, including somebody being able to see that stream live while it is happening to verify that people in it aren't underage. So now you think about this being applied. This isn't something that's just going to be applied to OnlyFans.
Mm-hmm.
Parts of this have already been applied voluntarily to Pornhub.
Mm-hmm.
Pornhub has already agreed to large parts of what MasterCard is demanding and is trying to negotiate in some other areas.
Okay.
OnlyFans is doing the same thing. They're agreeing unilaterally to one version of what MasterCard is demanding, in which case, which is just, okay, we're not going to do the hardcore porn anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing to remember is this also applies to places like Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
where porn isn't supposed to happen but does,
Mm-hmm.
and Facebook. And in these situations, you're going to have them watching all sorts of scary things,
Mm-hmm.
all in the name of fighting sex trafficking. And by targeting sites like OnlyFans, they're actively driving sex workers off the internet and into the arms of the traffickers again. So these laws that supposedly fight traffickers actually squeeze independent sex workers back into the clutches of the traffickers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really bad, folks. And I think it's interesting that it's even a question of whether or not sex work is real work, considering it's like the oldest profession in the world. I mean, how many of your jobs have been around for thousands of years?
The very oldest profession in the world is farmer. Congratulations, Kennedy.
I'm not sure if that's true.
No,
I'm not sure. I would love to actually have that discussion at length
farmer.
sometime.
The farmer. Now, so if a professional is someone who pursues their avocation exclusively with an increasingly arcane level of institutional knowledge, then the farmer is the first actual profession.
Even that, I think, is just a maybe.
The second actual profession in this same arcane sense is the priesthood, which followed farming very quickly. And then the third is banking, which branched directly out of priesthood.
Interesting.
But still, my point stands. How many people can say that the job that they work today existed
sex work also
hundreds or thousands of years ago?
Sex work also branched very quickly out of the priesthood. That's true.
That's
Not a joke.
But that we absolutely do not have time for that today. But yeah, I think it's absurd to say, something that is so obviously been a part of society for so long isn't real work. The only reason that people want to demean it is because of puritanical, moralistic reasons. There's no other basis for it. From a capitalist perspective, it is work. From a historical perspective, it is work. From a material perspective, it is work. Et cetera, et cetera. So we need to stand with sex workers as leftists, as we stand with all workers.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to stand with sex workers right now in particular, because this would be bad enough if it happened at any normal time. But because it's happening now, it is particularly unbelievably destructive. a lot of people went to OnlyFans as a way to safely do sex work during the pandemic. And some people were able to make that work for them in a big way and develop a whole career out of it where they had not had a stable career before.
Yeah.
And that is being taken away from people.
Yeah.
And during a time of pandemic, asking sex workers to put themselves at extraordinary risk of getting COVID is so cruel and wrong. And if we drive the sex workers offline, that's what we're doing.
And while I would love to be able to make a living streaming, people who make a living streaming are privileged and should not be telling anyone to get a real job. Let's get that out there right now.
Yeah. So my thing is that they, you can have the argument that you don't want, younger children to be subject to any of these different types of elements online, sex work, and things like that. But you cannot tell me that and then you still market, Call of Duty to 10-year-olds. You just can't. You just can't like make that moral argument. I mean, it's just like, I don't know. Maybe I sound wrong, but it's like,
no,
violence is way more traumatizing. And the thing is that, look, if we want to make it so that, kids are shielded from these things, then parents need to teach their children. And this comes with an apparatus where parents need to take more responsibility for what their kids, view online, as well as what games they play and things like that. It's just,
the whole system sustains itself.
Yeah, I think the violence really, violence being more acceptable than sex is definitely something that culturally is very insidious.
Violence is one of the defining elements of American culture to people who aren't Americans.
Yeah.
Alexis de Tocqueville said that the typical American was a killer. Now, he was talking about the typical white American, who the typical white American of the middle class, who was projected very much as the typical American by the American government of the time, even though that was not necessarily the truth. But the white American male of the middle class was a man with a gun who used that gun to kill indigenous people or black people in the furtherance of white power and wealth. And Alexis de Tocqueville was saying this in, the 1840s, 1850s. The typical American, by which he meant the typical American as America was trying to show its face to the world, the American middle class, the typical American was a killer. And that cultural violence still defines America to much of the rest of the world to this day for good reason.
Yeah. I like what Gene has to say. As long as you have your slaughterhouses and prisons, wars, you'll be a violent country. It's true. But yeah, so as far as they go, I mean, it's about, I don't know, there's a balance that has to be struck. And you want people who are sex workers to be protected as well. You don't want them to be, thrown into the hands of, you don't want them to be thrown into the hands of traffickers and nefarious people. We want them to have their own autonomy. Sorry, I can't pronounce my words today. But yeah, and so honestly, they OnlyFans has, threw them under the bus. Thankfully, Just for Fans is a site where they are by sex workers for sex workers.
So I will
Um,
note some controversy here among
mhm.
my friends in the business, which is that Just for Fans takes a 30% cut as
I see.
opposed to a 20% cut.
Got it.
The best thing that I can say is there are multiple options out there. And if someone is in that industry, it's a really good idea to look at all the options closely,
Hmm.
and really, really pick something that's going to work with you.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't want to. I don't know enough about all the options to tell anybody what to pick. I know that OnlyFans was considered 20% to OnlyFans was considered high by some of the people doing OnlyFans.
Hmm.
Some of the people at Just for Fans are very happy with the environment there, but a lot of
Hmm.
people who thought 20% was high for OnlyFans think 30% is ridiculously high.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's all there's going to be a lot of decision making that people are going to have to make, and more importantly, all of these other platforms are going to be squeezed in the same way that OnlyFans was, by MasterCard. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. Yeah.